Lanuti in the broadcast basement. It's a basement, it's a bar, it's many beers. And here's your host, Chris Lanuti.
Welcome down to Socks in the Basement. Pull up a stool at my 9-foot homemade oak bar in my basement on the south side of Chicago. My name is Chris Davis, sitting across from me.
Hello.
This all came out of, originally, a show that has been going on for about 10 years called The Broadcast Basement. This is an offshoot because I've just wanted to talk White Sox baseball for so long. It does not fit, though, on that program. Dave has decided to help me out. And Dave, now we have a website, socksinthebasement.com.
Nice.
We have it has its own podcast feed. It is now available on iTunes, and soon and very soon should be you should be able to get it on Google Play, Stitcher Radio. I know you can get it on Podbean right now. It takes a while to get everything spread out and approved by all the different podcast feed places. And then, very exciting news that I haven't even revealed on the other show, on the Broadcast Basement, is that I'm developing a new app. Okay.
Oh, very cool.
Yes, and when this app launches, you'll not only be able to listen to Socks in the Basement or the Broadcast Basement or any other podcast that comes out of this basement, but you'll also be able to interact with it. You'll be able to leave, voice messages back and forth with us. You'll be able to text and send messages to us. If we ever go live, you'll be able to watch it right through your device, your phone, or anything else like that. It'll be a fully interactive app. I didn't think it was possible. I sat down with my guy last week. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be it's going to be something no other podcast or podcast network has.
Well, that's I think important because just me, when I listen to, I have a few different podcasts that I listen to, as does my wife, and certain podcasts you can get here, certain podcasts you can get there. You can download. So you have to download a whole bunch of apps to get the different podcasts that you want. It would be really nice to have just one app for, the one podcast that I listen to, which is yours, of course. So that way you get to sift through the rubble a little bit.
Right,
yeah. Direct to the source.
Right, exactly.
Very cool.
So I think
cool.
It should be really neat, and hopefully we'll have that out before the summer is over. This show is in its infancy, though. The first couple episodes, we did those back in May. We had to take a step back. We had to make sure that we set up the feed and everything right. This is the first show that we've been able to do, but hopefully we'll be able to make this into a weekly thing here in Socks in the Basement. Now, I want to talk about, I guess, the pitching hangover is what I'm probably going to end up calling this episode.
Pitching hangover.
Because I have a hangover because I went out drinking on a Monday night. I did. I went out drinking. When you have a weird schedule like I have, and I'm still working in a 911 center and podcasting at the same time, and I'm working afternoons, you get those rare occasions where you're off and you don't have anything going on with your podcasting, and you look at the wife and it's 8 o'clock at night and you're like, the preteen can watch the other two. Let's go up the street to the bar. Okay, sure. Fine. We'll be back by 11. And it turns into 2 o'clock in the morning. We're sitting down here at this bar because every other bar is closed at that point on a Monday night. You see what I'm saying?
Right, of course.
But then the problem is having this bar here and the party continues. We come home and the children are there. And we're like, all right, off to bed, kids. And then we come down here, we put on some music. That is the danger of having a bar inside of your house. She had to go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning today.
Oh, no.
She's dying. I already talked to her. I don't know how I'm even alive. So I'm extremely, horribly, terribly hungover while doing the show, which is perfect because I knew I was going to be doing the show. I knew how important it was to get the launch off correctly. And then what did I do? I drank too much last night. So I'm a mess. But maybe I need to drink a lot to watch this White Sox pitching. Because White Sox pitching drives a man to drink.
I don't know about that. I mean, just getting back to what you were saying before, I can sympathize about the hours because being a musician and music business owner by trade, I get to make my own hours. So it's really sort of weird. On Friday nights, Saturday morning is my busiest teaching morning. Busiest teaching day at the school. And so my Friday nights, I have to watch it a little bit because Saturday morning is the only morning that I have to be up for work because every other day of the week, I don't open the store until 2 o'clock in the afternoon because we have obviously after school and after work hours. We are an extracurricular activity. So I get it. I do get it.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, most of the world does their partying on their Friday and Saturday nights. I'm more of a Monday night guy these days, which is really bad.
Well, at least beer prices are better at the bar.
Yeah. They're just happy to see you. You get really great service.
Nice.
They're just happy to see. It's like the poor bartender or the poor waitress is like, oh, thank God, there's somebody here. I wasn't going to make any money tonight. You know, and you're the degenerate sitting in the bar on a Monday night. Okay, speaking of some degenerates, let's talk White Sox pitching.
Of course.
Okay. I was looking at this the other day. I play fantasy baseball. Now, you don't need to play fantasy baseball to understand anything that I'm going to talk about here. There are some people who love to get into advanced stats. There are people who love to dive into the sabermetrics black hole, okay? But there's one stat that I always look at to measure a pitcher when I'm playing fantasy baseball, when I'm trying to identify players, when I'm drafting players, when I'm picking players up, and it seems to always hold true. The guy eventually will be good. I find a lot of diamonds in the rough that had bad seasons the year before, didn't have a lot of wins. Their ERA might have been slightly inflated, but I'm able to find the guy that's going to rebound or do better because I look at the whip.
Of course.
That's the walks and hits per innings pitched. That's a very simple stat. It's a stat that wasn't on baseball cards 20 years ago. It's on baseball cards now.
It's even on broadcast now. Like when they show the stat line of a pitcher now, you get your typical, your wins, your losses, your ERA, your opponent's average against, and now they start to include the whip now. I have noticed that as well.
And I think that a great way, how I've always done it, how I've always said, okay, this guy, not good. I'm cutting him out of my dynasty fantasy team. This guy, not going to be a good pitcher. This guy, not going to be in the major leagues very long. This guy, not going to be a starter, probably heading to the bullpen, is that I have certain thresholds I look at whip. Okay, I believe that a starting pitcher has to have a whip that's a 1.30 or lower.
Real quick, did we explain, did I miss it? Did we explain what whip actually is? What
walks
that
and hits
for?
per innings pitched.
Right.
I think I said it, but just in case, I'm glad you brought that back up. I think that your whip needs to be 1.30 or lower to be an effective starting pitcher. I think anybody that's above that, you see a lot of problems. That's basically putting on a base runner and a third. Okay, just under a base runner and a third every inning.
Either by walk or hit.
By walk
every
or
inning.
Hit. Every inning. So you're putting base runners on, increasing the scoring chances of the opponent. Okay, now you can't do anything about your defense. You can't do anything about bad bounces. You can't do anything about you screw up a pitch and all of a sudden a guy gets a hold of it. But if you have a higher whip, there's more guys on base when those things happen. Therefore, more runs score. Okay, you can't control whether or not your offense is going to go out and score a bunch of runs, but you could control the amount of base runners that you get on base, therefore lowering the chance of your opponent to score runs, and that pitcher becomes far more effective. I think a starting pitcher should be at a 1.30 or lower, and I think that a really good starting pitcher normally sits in the 1.teens. See what I'm saying?
So just for sort of some reference here, I don't know if you can look this up. I don't have it in front of me. So a guy like, for example, say Chris Sale's whip.
Oh, Chris Sale, I'm going to tell you right now, probably has a really low whip. Okay?
Or like a Kluber.
Oh,
whip.
Here I'll bring that up right now because I think that this is a stat that is extremely important when you're looking at players. Chris Sale's whip. His whip this year is 0.97. That's almost like a closer's whip. I mean, he's an elite. You see what I'm saying? And his career whip is a 1.04. So Chris Sale essentially puts one runner on by a walk or a hit per inning.
Looking at Corey Kluber's whip right now, his is 0.83 for this year. He's got a total 8-year whip of 1.06. That is a little skewed, obviously, because he's got a really high whip for his first 2 years in the league, 2011, 2012. When 2014 hits, that's when you start to see Corey Kluber into the 1.0 range.
And that's when you start to see Corey Kluber become an all-star,
right,
Cy Young caliber pitcher. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And those are extremes. Those are the best of the best right there.
Correct.
You're an effective pitcher, though, if your whip is below 1.30. I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give all that range, okay? And like a guy like a Mariano Rivera was always like below a 1. Closers generally have to be below a 1 or just above a 1
because they're only on for 1 inning.
Right, exactly.
Those are so we're excluding the specialists in this. We're
right.
talking about the starting pitchers
right.
at this point.
So so now that I've established that, okay, who do you think right now on the White Sox has the best whip? Who's their most effective, best pitcher that they have right now on this team?
It's a small sample size. Well, definitely.
This is your guess. What do you think?
Well, it's not a guess. I've got those stats in front of me, Chris.
Okay.
I wonder.
I got Lopez. Lopez has got a 1.216.
Correct.
Okay.
And then surprisingly, shockingly, shortly thereafter, whip is James Shields with 1.28.
And sitting right in the middle, even though he's only had a few starts, is the guy that I am really hoping this is like that. Because I was reading about him and I realized that we may have found a diamond in the rough, Dylan Covey.
Yes.
Okay. He's only got 5 games in, but Dylan Covey's at a 1.27. Those are the only 3 starting pitchers on this team that are below a 1.3.
At the time of this recording, Dylan Covey's last start was head-to-head with Chris Sale against the Boston Red Sox, which he won.
Yeah,
which he won.
Yeah,
they won the game 1-0. It was. I was watching the game with my wife, and I was just so impressed. And at that point, I started doing the same thing that you did. I'm like, well, who is this guy, Dylan Covey? I mean, you remember him from last year with the White Sox, and he was horrible, to say the least, and that's putting it nicely.
Right. But he has a pedigree that I don't think people understand. He was drafted in the first round, 14th overall by the Milwaukee Brewers. Okay, in 2010. And then the A's took him later on in the 4th round in the 2013 amateur draft, and that's where he ended up. But there was a point where a team thought he was a first-round talent.
Right, and
okay?
he was in the A's farm system for, 4 years? 3 years?
And then
he was in there.
And then he got cut. He got released.
Right.
And the White Sox picked him up off of waivers. Okay. Now, his overall career, now, when you talk whip, is a little suspect because he only has pitched 2 major league seasons. He pitched last year for the Sox where he was 0-7. He had an ERA over 7. He had a whip of 1.67. Okay.
Right, it was very bad.
Very, very bad. But he was only 25 years old and it was his first taste of major league pitching. I'm more encouraged seeing a guy come back in his second year, get another opportunity, and have currently at this time an ERA that's 2.22 and a whip that's under 1.30, then I'm encouraged by a guy who's going backwards like Lucas Giolito, who's the exact opposite now.
Right.
Giolito now is looking bad. And the worst thing about the Giolito thing is his first taste of pitching, okay, when he came to the majors with the Nationals, he had a high whip and was ineffective. He came out last year, and he's at the end of the season, and he has a good whip, but he's basically playing against September call-ups in non-pressurized games.
Correct.
He comes back this year, and he's not playing against those guys that probably should be in the minors, and he's not getting those little breaks in the lineup, and his whip is swelled back to exactly what it was when he was with the Nationals. That is concerning to me. I am as much as I am excited about seeing a guy like Dylan Covey go, okay, I think I figured this out, and I'm doing something, I'm effective even in a small sample size. The Giolito thing scares the crap out of me because if you now look at his whole his range over the last 3 years, you see a tendency where it might have been an abnormality last year when he had a low whip, and in reality, he might not be a very effective pitcher.
Well, comparing the Covey situation with the Giolito situation, we've seen the Dylan Covey type story before to some degree with a guy named Mark Burley. I mean, this was a guy who was taken. God, when was Burley taken? It was super late in the draft. It was in like the 50th round or something.
He was in round 4,287.
Ridiculous like that.
He was drafted. It was already July at that point. The draft was still going on, and somebody picked Mark Burley.
The following story is completely true. The names have not been changed because
Hi, I'm Chris Lanuti.
Oh, really? Got to read it? It's 3 words long. You're like getting ready, like adjusting yourself.
Join me and my friends as we belly on up to my homemade 9-foot oak bar in my basement on the south side of Chicago.
I'd say expose them to as much violence and nudity as you can at an early age to prep them for life.
Was it hard to climb up the ladder in your skirt?
No, it's just embarrassing.
Oh, okay.
Each week, we talk craft beer, sports, fatherhood, and the oddities of life.
Your show is so different and fascinating.
Wait, this is a podcast? I just come over here to drink.
Join us for 30 minutes of good each and every week.
Welcome back to the Missing a Chromosome podcast.
It's the Broadcast Basement on Stitcher, iTunes, and BroadcastBasement.com. You had a guy that you wanted to talk about. Whoa, Daniel Palka today? You were excited about that?
Speaking
you're
of,
all fired up about
well,
you got
I'm
Daniel
not fired
Palka.
up.
You got
I'm
Daniel
not-
Palka fever.
I'm
is
not
what you got?
fired up. I'm not drinking the Daniel Palka Kool-Aid
You're
just
not?
yet.
You're not all, like,
just
super
yet.
excited about him?
Not just yet, because we have a super small sample size here. But it's real interesting. Speaking of guys that are basically coming out of nowhere that you didn't expect to be good, and all of a sudden here they are. Right. Daniel Palka has been tearing the cover off of the ball.
Okay.
And he's got now, albeit small sample size, right now he's sitting at a 264 average,
Okay.
which is unfortunately one of the higher batting averages on the team
Yes,
at this
that
point,
is one of the high batting averages on this team.
which is a concern.
Right.
Which is a concern. But you're talking about here an OPS total of .818.
Yeah,
Which
you're over 800 with your OPS.
Which is good.
You're doing well.
Which is good.
Right.
There was another stat, and I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but when he hits the ball, it travels far and fast.
Right.
It was something about he has like the 3rd or 4th highest, what's the stat, like exit velocity, like how fast and how far the ball goes when he gets hold of it. He has something like the 4th or 5th highest one of those in baseball right now.
Right.
So I'm slightly curious, Chris, what are your thoughts on this guy?
I'm going to give you a comparison with a guy that we talked about in a previous podcast, okay, who's sitting on the exact same team as Daniel Palka right now, and his name is Matt Davidson.
Right.
Okay? They are a year difference in age. Davidson's a year older at 27, and Palka's is 26. They have played almost the same amount of games because of Davidson's injury. Palka has played 12 less games, okay?
Okay.
And so they're running at least close enough to each other, and they both have suspect defense. Okay. And they both have high OPSs. Davidson got an 832 OPS to Daniel Palka's 818. If you want to know what an OPS is, it's your on base percentage plus your slugging percentage, which basically says the guy gets on base and the guy hits the ball, and when he hits it, he gets lots of extra base hits, which is good. Okay.
Right.
Now, Davidson's batting average is 225 as of right now when we're talking, and Palka's at 264. You love the batting average, great. But here's my concern about Daniel Palka. You have a 264 batting average, and you have an on-base percentage of 298.
I saw that, which means he's not he's not walking at all.
No.
When Matt Davidson's on-base percentage is
He's
higher
357.
than yours,
Yeah.
which 357
Matt Davidson is number 1 on the team if you're not counting guys that have just gotten there or been there for a short amount of time, like Kevin Smith and Matt Skoll. Okay, Matt Davidson's on-base percentage is actually a tick higher than Jose Abreu right now. So when you're sitting around, you're talking about a Daniel Palka, it's great, it's fun, he hits the ball hard, it gets out really fast, I love the batting average, that's wonderful, but if he can't get on base more, okay, then Davidson almost gives you more value. Okay.
even if you're putting him in, say, the cleanup spot, like where his job is not necessarily to get on base, as is more to drive in guys that are on base.
I hate guys with on base percentages under 300. I hate that. I
Okay.
hate not getting on base. You're telling me you can't get on base you can't get you can't get on base even close to a third of the time. Yeah, it bothers me when a guy's on base percentage is that low. And like, here's the thing.
But let's
okay. Imagine Daniel Palka forget the defense and the fact that supposedly he's bad at it. I've seen some plays that are just horrible that he does. He clearly can't play defense. He's a DH. Okay?
Of course.
All right. So he could he be like to compare to somebody that's up on the north side? Could he be a Kyle Schwarber? He could get to that point, but he's got to get on base more. Okay. And I think if he could get his on base percentage up and continue to slug the way he's doing, he'd be a star. Now we're talking an OPS over 900. Now we're talking a true middle of the lineup type of a hitter. Not there yet.
Is there a spot in a lineup somewhere for a guy that has a high slugging percentage, a 520 slugging percentage, but a low OBP because he's not walking as much? I mean, that's why I brought up, cleanup, but
I don't know.
But then again, you're dealing with another. Yeah.
You know what he feels like to me? He feels like Nicky Delmonico from last year.
Oh boy.
You know how excited we got about Nicky Delmonico?
You guys
they're talking about him on
Nicky
MLB
Delmonico.
Network, and they're like, Nicky Delmonico, he's the best. Look at what he's doing. Nicky's great. Nicky's this, Nicky's that.
I would like to state that I had never bought a Nicky Delmonico jersey.
I didn't either.
I never was sold.
But
I never got it.
Like, I just feel like we're going to see a lot of guys that are going to come up on this team. They're going to have flashes. They're going to do well for a little bit, and they're going to go away. I don't buy the Palka thing till he starts getting on base. I'm not buying it. I'm not in. It's fun to watch, and I'm glad that they're playing. And they need to win games. I'm not of this ilk of like my dad was aggravated. He's like, did you see this? Won another series. They're killing their draft choice.
Oh God.
And I'm like, what? I want him to win. I want him to get used to winning. There are a few guys on that team that need to get used to winning, okay? I want Yohan Moncada to play well. I really, really do. I'm disappointed his average is still as low as it is.
Yes, me too.
I see some really good defense out of him, and I see a swagger about him that makes me feel like he's going to be good, but I want to see this team perform well. I'm going to tell you, guys like Palka, guys like Delmonico, like I said, we talked about Davidson, and I think you can lump all those guys into a group of players of one of them has to distinguish themselves as better than the other guys that go that next level higher, or they won't be here in 2 years.
Because again, reiterating, because the Sox in their system are so deep in the outfield / DH position.
Right. They don't need these guys. If these guys all failed, based upon their prospects, they would still have a very good outlook ahead of them. You don't want them to fail, but they still have a very good outlook in front of them. So I'm going to be picky, and I'm not going to say that that's okay. I think that on-base percentage is too low, just like I said before, and I said it with Scott King from WGN in a previous episode. I think Matt Davidson should be hitting 250. Okay, I think he should at least be able to get a hit 1 out of every 4 times. If his average is down at 220, he's just not a guy who's going to be on this team long term. I just don't see a guy who's able to do that.
Right.
You are trying to build towards championships. Guys like that don't exist on championship teams. Okay, there's got to be a standard. Like I said, is he good enough? Is the guy good enough to be a Yankee? Is the guy good enough to be an Astro? Is the guy good? Is he good enough to be a Dodger? Or is he good enough to be a Red Sox? No, he wouldn't fit in that lineup. Well, then he doesn't fit in this lineup long term, and that's the thing. So, is there fun and exciting stuff with Daniel Palka? Yeah. Does he need to get on base more? Yeah, because he would not end up on those teams. He just wouldn't be good enough.
Okay.
That's kind of how I see him.
I'll buy it.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad you buy it because I got a freaking splitting headache and I'm tired of trying to argue my point.
To be lost inside, where it's safe and sound, but then lost in the moment, feel the world around me slowly start to fade, drift into silence before anyone else can hear me scream, and I can't run away from the things that we face, but it's right.
Why do I drink on Mondays?
Because the beer is cheaper.
And the worst thing is the fact that I sit there and I go, it'll just be for a little bit. And then I told myself this morning, like, I'll never do that again. That was terrible. Why did I sit down and say, I'll have the Imperial Russian Stout that was 16% alcohol that was sitting up there on the big chalkboard in the brewery that I was sitting in last night? Why did I do that? And I sit there and I make all kinds of promises in the morning, like, I'll never do that again. God, just get me through this morning. Just Find a way for the toddler to feed himself so I don't have to take care of him. Please, God, don't let anybody in this house wake up for a few more hours because my head is throbbing.
We didn't really discuss the relief pitching situation.
What do you think about the relief pitching situation?
Well, here's the thing that...
Because I don't even look at it because it's frightening to me. Jace Fry is the only guy I'm interested in. I hope he continues to pitch well.
First of all, okay, relief pitching on the White Sox.
Jace Fry, by the way, another guy that is a pretty good name prospect. I mean, he's not a surprise.
Okay.
He was listed at the beginning of the year as one of the White Sox top 25 prospects on MLB.com. So he was a guy that they had and they in their system that scouts said was going to be good, and he looks good out of the bullpen. Okay.
So this is a guy, so excluding Jace Fry, okay, who is a prospect that highly ranked. He's come up, he's looking good. Nobody in this bullpen that I'm looking at right now, I can really see being around.
Oh, it's like looking at a murder scene. It's horrible. And that's the worst thing. You have to watch games and you have to say to yourself, okay, well, the starting pitcher did well, and if we would have had a bullpen, we would have won that game. You almost have to say that to yourself.
Oh, no,
you have to say that to yourself sometimes. Like, okay, we went, let's say we went 5-5 over the last 10 games, and you sit there and you go, God, if we had a bullpen, we might have gone 7-3 that over the last 10. And that's a positive thing.
I've watched games, up to the point where Renteria has had to go to the bullpen, and certain pitchers in this bullpen. I mean, like,
who makes you turn the TV off the moment you see him?
Aaron Bummer.
Oh, that's it. It's like, oh, okay. It was a good game. I enjoyed these 6 innings of baseball today, and I'm not going to waste the next hour of my life watching this lead slip away.
I tell my wife that, okay, this guy has been perfectly named, because if Aaron Bummer is in the game, it usually means one of two things: either something horrifically bad has happened, or something horrifically bad is about to happen.
It's about to happen.
So, no. Well, here's White Sox fans. Here's the good news.
Aaron Bummer, by the way, has a whip of 1.70.
That's awesome.
That is absolutely brutal. Okay.
Here's the good news, White Sox fans.
The only guy worse than him this year was Carson Fulmer.
Oh, nice. Here's the good news about bullpen. It's been my experience watching baseball a long time. Bullpen guys, you get them, they're good for a year or two, and then their shelf life is up. So with the bullpen, it's not something that you're expecting to be good at this point in time.
Right.
You'd like it to be, but if it's not something that's going to really cause you concern, because if we're looking at 2020, a bullpen guy who's good now is probably not going to be good in 2020 anyway.
Right. And that's why if they could find somebody to take somebody like Nate Jones off our hands right now, I would do it. He's 32 years old. He's having his worst season since his rookie season with the White Sox in terms of his walks and hits per innings pitched.
Right.
He puts on too many base runners. He's not as effective, and he's only getting older. And that goes right to your point. There was a window with Nate Jones where he was a good relief pitcher.
Well, the
window is closed.
They were talking closer for Nate Jones a couple years ago.
The window is closed. Okay, if they can get something for him, if somebody buys into the fact that over his career he was worth over 6 wins above replacement, and they go, okay, maybe if he comes in and he can be just somebody that helps us out down the stretch. If they could find somebody that would take him, I would move him, because he's not that this year, and he's only getting older, and you hate doing that because these are people. They're people. They're this is their livelihood. This is what they want. In more than anything, they are lucky enough though to play baseball. And there is a thing where eventually you get to a certain age where you start to deteriorate. And there are stats that back up and show the general trend. I would, if somebody offered me something for Nate Jones, I would give him right away.
Now, interesting stat here. Looking at Nate Jones, Nate Jones is right around that 1.35 area as far as his WHIP is concerned. But as we kind of talked about before,
but he's not a starter.
No,
if
right.
You should be much lower than that.
Right. You don't apply that stat when we're talking about relievers and specialist type pitchers, because they're only in for an inning or two.
All right. This has been a good episode of the Sox in the Basement. Do us a favor. Follow us on iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter. There's actually Twitter locked my account. I made a mistake.
What did you do?
I was setting up the Sox in the Basement account, and it actually says in the instructions, pick your age or the age of your business. Like if it was like a business account. So I was like, okay, well, it's the age of the podcast. We started in May of 2018.
Oh, boy.
And Twitter reacted like, you're an infant. You can't have a Twitter account, and locked it. And then it like made me take a picture of my driver's license and send it to them.
What?
That was a week ago. They
my
still
God.
have locked it. So you can't find Socks in the Basement yet on Twitter. Okay, I have to figure out that mess.
Twitter police.
Twitter sucks. They're already killing me. Okay, there's a Facebook page. You can go and you can find Socks in the Basement on Facebook. There is, like I said, hopefully a Twitter thing. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. You can subscribe to us on Podbean. You can always go to socksinthebasement.com, and it will continue to expand. We appreciate you listening to this little 30-minute show on the White Sox that hopefully will be coming out weekly, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to bring in some guests and expand and get bigger and everything else like that, or you'll just have to listen to me and Dave lament about the state of the team. I'm still positive about this team. I still think I'm still excited about the rebuild. I'm still happy with the team. It's tough for me to evaluate the guys that are there now because there's not a lot of them. I think next time when we sit down, we need to look at somebody specifically that we think is going to be on the team and be like, this is why we think he's going to be on the team. You see what I'm saying?
Fair enough.
Definitely. And we might even start adding some fantasy baseball stuff in there too. I know you're not interested.
I don't play.
But I might do like a fantasy baseball minute. Maybe we'll add that in there as well.
Very cool.
All right, we're out of here. Thanks very much for listening to Socks in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, right here from socksinthebasement.com.
Another show is wrapped up. Another show's in the books. Another show is wrapped up. And then by the looks, it's going to be a good one. And we'll see you next week. And the nudist basement. And the nudist basement. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. And it's in the books. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. And by the looks, it's gonna be a good one. Nudist basement. Broadcast basement. The nudist basement. The broad basement. Slancha. That was like Dropkick Murphys or something, right? I felt like it.